I welcome everyone to the second video today. I hope you liked the first theme of the video, and you will appreciate the second. Do not forget to like and subscribe to the channel. This is very important to me. I will not detain you. Let's start. Story 1 from user Dolores Herbig. My friends used to live in a gentrifying neighborhood near the beach in my city. They had a regular apartment, but someone bought the building in front of them, beach adjacent, knocked it down, and put up a few luxury homes. This crazy woman bought one. She had a 2-car garage and a driveway, and best we could tell, she had 1 car. But no one was allowed to park on the street in front of her house, which was clearly marked as a public street and where people had been parking since forever to go to the beach or because their building didn't have parking. We could see this street from their apartment. She went out and keyed any cars parked there. It took a while to figure out it was her, but eventually people saw her doing it. All the neighbors warned their friends not to park there, and people started putting up cameras to get evidence of it. Some dude with a piece of trash, ugly as truck, started parking directly in front of her house every day, just to sleep with her, because he didn't care if she scratched it up. So, she slashed his tires. It got to the point where every time she opened her door to walk outside, neighbors would cuss her out through their windows. One night she went out in the middle of the night and painted the entire curb on that street red. Someone got it on video. Several neighbors called the city. I think she got a talking to and a fine. And she had several insurance claims pending against her from damage to cars. And she finally stopped. Everyone still hates her though, even new neighbors, who are told the story of her from older residents. Story 2 from user deleted. We've had an arrangement with our neighbor for 20 years now that she can use our paddock to put her horses on. Well, she's getting up there in age, so there's been some long periods of time where she hasn't had horses on our paddock in recent times. We notice some new horses there and assume that they're hers, except they're not. And they belong to this crazy lady in town, who through town gossip finds out the paddock doesn't belong to our neighbor, but belongs to us. So she goes round spreading a rumor that my mom tried to poison her horses, which is the first time any of us realize the horses aren't our neighbors. My mom then proceeds to inform said crazy lady that A, no, she didn't try to poison crazy lady's horses, B, there's nothing poisonous on our field, C, if she keeps spreading rumors Mum's going to the cops, and D, if she ever puts her horses on our land ever again, Mum's selling them or calling the SPCA for abandonment. Crazy lady then proceeds to become even more crazy and starts lurking outside our place, taking photos of us and our paddock. Then gets caught going up random people's driveways through our small rural town, taking photos of people's kids. She's since been spoken to about this behavior by the cops, and it seems to have stopped. But damn, she's a weirdo. The unwise thing about this is our neighbor is the one who has the crazy lady nickname throughout town, purely because she prefers animals to people and comes across as a little impatient when dealing with people. But we've always gotten on well with her. She just isn't a people person. Story 3 from user Lord Guinea Pig. This guy is weird as hell. Okay, so, he plays VR in a large bunny Onzy, like the kind the kid gets in A Christmas Story. Which, you know, cool. I guess you do you. But he plays with his window open so everyone can see him, and on top of that, he plays, from what I can tell, exclusively military sims and never breaks character. You can hear him yelling stuff like, "Contact 30 clicks south by southwest," or stuff, "Down reloading, ready up." The guy will throw himself to the ground, and I mean throw himself. The few times I've spoken to him or seen him in person, he's had bruises on his arms and face from hitting the ground. And that's only what I can see from his window. Other than that at night, you can hear the guy grinding, hammering, and drilling on something. I don't know, he's weird, dude. He says he works for the government, does contractor work. He has really nice stuff, expensive stuff, and new vehicles all the time. He can't carry on a conversation, starts getting nervous, and will break away as soon as he can. He was home for a few weeks, said he was in between contracts, and I managed to talk to him a bit while he was setting stuff outside. That stuff he was laying out. A rucksack that had seen some heavy use and everything from medical and survivalist camping gear to empty magazine holders, and a plate holder for bullet-resistant plates. He said he was letting them air out since he was planning on going on a backpacking trip for a few weeks. Weirdest part is, he leaves almost every night between 9 to 10 p.m. Probably to get some of the junk food he'll leave in his car occasionally, but every night? I like to think the guy's a secret agent and uses the VR trash as an excuse to explain away bruises and cuts. Either way, I feel sorta safe. He's genuinely nice when he does talk to you, just in that I haven't spoken to another human being for years kind of way. You go Secret Agent Bunny, saving the world one hop at a time. Story 4 from user Revjor. I used to rent the basement apt of the neighborhood crazy lady. Her car was decorated with thousands of rocks that she glued all over it. The property was incredibly overgrown. She had 5 unlicensed dogs, 2 cats, turtles that lived in her bathtub, pigeons, chickens, a rooster, and more animals that I can't specifically remember. But I do remember counting them all up. She had something like 17 animals upstairs. She'd regularly practice saxophone while the dogs howled along with her. She didn't have a job and spent every day going on Craigslist free and picking things up. There was a room in the basement where she kept all of the stuff that was 3-4 feet deep and completely packed. I remember a cardboard stand-up of Captain Kirk and one of the Statue of Liberty sticking out of the hoard. I desperately took a job as a door-to-door solicitor for a short time and was randomly assigned to my neighborhood. When I introduced myself to the next-door neighbor and said what house I lived in, they were about ready to wring my neck, ha ha. I told them, yeah, it probably sucks living next to her, but I actually live there, so yeah, no sympathy. Story 5 from user deleted. My parents' next-door neighbor, Nancy, started with the no trespassing sign in the backyard that faces our yard and nothing else. Set up a motion-activated floodlight that faces the side of our house and nothing else. She stabbed our ball when it landed in her yard when we were children. Called the cops on the neighbors because their dog barked constantly, despite them not owning a dog. Thinks my mother, the sweetest person you can meet in this world, is a backstabbing traitor for warning the new neighbors not to let their kids play on Nancy's lawn, verbally assaulted me for chasing deer out of our flower garden, etc. But the true FICO moment came with the trees. We have large trees along the property line, just barely on our side, and she was starting to go all psycho about the tree is gonna fall and crush her house and demanded it be cut down. We consulted an arborist who said it did not, but could use a trim that would make it impossible to fall on her yard at all. The entire time they were trimming, she stalked the property line and screamed if anyone stepped over it. While this trim was happening, a single stick fell on her lawn. She lost it. Threatened to call the cops, told them they better have all their licenses up to date, etc. Arborists tried to blow her off, but my mom insisted they check. Sent someone to City Hall and renewed their license. 30 minutes after that, a cop showed up to check as Nancy had called them. Arborists were super thankful for my mom warning them. Story 6 from user Daniel Desane. Explodes. Okay, I guess that requires some explanation. This isn't so much crazy as it is dumb, but it sure seemed crazy to me. This happened back in 2009. I had a neighbor back in the day who we will call Gary. Gary was a really sweet guy, middle-aged guy, kind of had it rough in life, but managed to keep his spirits up. He liked beer and BBQ to a degree that made me like him immensely. He made extra money by doing odd jobs around the neighborhood. Heck, he mowed my grass for pretty cheap. Great guy. He lived with his uncle, a cool old coot with a hook for a hand. The uncle supplemented his income by buying and selling random stuff, much of which he kept in his backyard. Very Sanford and Son. They even had the old-timey truck. Gary loved to make BBQ. He would slow smoke stuff in smokehouses that he made himself out of random junk. People would bring him things, and he would turn them into smokehouses. He made the neighborhood smell nice. One day, I am off from work, hanging out at my house and playing video games. Suddenly, there is a loud explosion that sounded like an artillery shell. Pictures fall off my walls and my cats scatter and hide. Being a dumbass, my unwise back goes running out the back door of my house toward the sound of the explosion. My neighbor's house is right behind mine, across an alley. So I immediately see the following. The awning on the back of my neighbor's house is on fire. There is a 50-gallon drum in the backyard. It is on fire. There is a tarp held up by a number of poles to provide shade in the backyard. It is on fire. My neighbor is on the ground, unconscious, being rolled around by his uncle and a buddy. He is also on fire. So I see someone is already calling 911, so I go to help. By the time I am there, Gary is no longer on fire, so one of his buddies grabs the hose and I grab a bucket. They have one of those dual spigot thingies, so I can fill the bucket while the other guy uses the hose. I am putting out the awning on the house, and the other guy sprays down Gary to make sure he is good and extinguished, and to take heat from his burns, which look terrible. As I am refilling the bucket, I see the guy with the hose is putting out the tarp shade. He turns toward the burning barrel, aims the hose, and pulls the trigger. I am doing the slow motion no thing. When the water hit the barrel, a mushroom cloud of fire and smoke appeared above my neighborhood. I was freaking out, screaming about shooting a hose into burning liquid. I later asked his uncle what was in the barrel. He said, "Oh, a mix of kerosene and fuel oil." I said, "That is 2 of the 3 ingredients in rudimentary liquid rocket fuel. The 3rd ingredient makes it explode slower." Eventually the ambulance came and immediately left with Gary. Turned out he had 2nd and 3rd degree burns on over half his body. However, the biggest issue was the concussion of the explosion. He had a bajillion little internal bleeds all through his torso. He nearly died more than once. It took him a few months to get out of the hospital. His face had melted, and he looked pretty horrible. He's fine now, though he is not pretty. But he had to stop doing my lawn because I guess sunlight hurts now. Poor, sweet dude came to me. This was how I found out he was out of the hospital. To apologize and to tell me his cousin will be doing my lawn. I was just glad he lived. And here he was making sure I was taken care of. And that is the story of my exploding neighbor. Story 7 from user deleted. Before I moved out of my parents' place, the neighbor on the other side of the backyard fence was always doing crazy trash. He'd be practicing shooting his BB gun down his yard at the fence, while my dad was doing yard work just on the other side of it, or in the middle of the yard, or just minding his own business, really. My dad and I got absolutely pissed one time because our neighbor decided to try practicing with a .22 rifle while my dad was outside with our German Shepherd. There were 2 instances where the neighbor trapped 2 skunks on separate occasions in a live animal trap, killed them himself, then threw their bodies over the fence to stink up the entire yard and neighborhood by extension. He then tried to tell the neighbors that it was my parents' fault. My dad simply cleaned up the messes, disposed of the skunk remains properly, then told the neighbors the truth of the matter before the wacko managed to. It helped in our defense that our other neighbors already viewed the guy as the crazy neighbor. My dad also invested in a camera system and set it up on the shed just by the fence. Oh well, the neighbor's dead now. Heart attack or some trash, I forgot what my dad said. And his yard has become a huge mess and eyesore because his widowed wife refuses to do anything about it. Story 8 from user overengineered. Constantly yells at children to stop doing whatever they are doing anywhere within eyesight of his house. I mean, yelling. He also likes to open carry his pistol while he actively walks of his property and up to children of any age and just starts playing into them, full-on screaming and sweating at 8-year-olds while he rests his hand on his gun. He is a serial 911 abuser. Suspected, arrested, but not convicted child molester. Most of his property is just slightly out of city code too. After the most recent incident of him waving a loaded weapon at 6yo that lives next door to him, because her dad had the audacity to move his own landscaping plants and horrible a-hole didn't like it, we have started a neighborhood campaign to just start filling city ordinance grievances against him. He's a dangerous bully, and unfortunately, he knows how to constantly stay just enough within his legal rights to avoid serious consequences so far. We're now all waiting to see what happens when the city makes him pull out his new fence because he has the ugly side out. That's a no-no in the suburban kingdoms. Plus, I doubt he pulled a permit. The hope is to get him to move out or go to jail. With his current escalations, jail is looking likely, but everyone is afraid it will be because he accidentally shot a 4IO. Thanks to everyone who was here today. I hope you enjoyed today's parts. I love you all. Bye-bye.